once through and said, that's it.
Are you prodigies?
Good.
Once? Only once.
All right then. Then everyone must have encountered difficulty somewhere along the line. Did Vincent say, go away? Someone stopped talking to you? You got to write yourself in a corner so you have to walk around and say, we've written a hole. We've written a very big hole. What do we do with it now? What does everyone want to know? Anybody got any questions?
Cheery group.
There's a brave soul. Hi.
Hi. For the people that have never studied writing, let's say, like a lot of people I've talked to, they say, oh, I haven't written since college, you know, but they have some kind of a background. If you've never ever done anything, which was like me when I started writing stories, and I ended up finally putting out a little zine, which I'm, you know, proud that it made it. What kind of advice can you give? I mean, you know, like I've heard people say, well, you know, well, I have my outline, I did this, and then the right way you're supposed to do is you make your outline, and then you go back, and then you do this, and you do that. And that's all foreign to me because I've never studied writing in college, you know. So do you have any tips for just, do you just sit down and write? And
some people
that's
write from point A to point Z. Some people start in and around you and write backwards. Some people say, I've got scenes. I've got this wonderful scene.
That's what I do.
But I don't have a story to go with it. Write in either direction. Write what you've got, get it down before it gets away.
Because the characters will push you forward and backward. The characters will take over at some point. Just sit down and write. That's the first rule.
I probably have about 15 beginnings that are just sitting there waiting to have time to go back and evolve it on into a story. But it's like, right, you've got that scene that you think of, it's in your head, something reminds you of it, and you start it, and I put it down.
Just
and
write. That's the first
yeah.
rule. Don't procrastinate, don't outline, don't keep thinking. When the characters say now, and they push you, sit down and do it, because you'll lose it. You'll have the idea.
That's right, you lose it.
It'll go away.
But half the time it's in the middle of the night.
I
don't think my husband would appreciate that.
You're trying to sleep in this scene.
They're called gremlins, and they come and they claw at you.
Then keep a tape recorder or a piece of paper by your bed. If you can't turn on the light or a flashlight, just keep a little tape recorder. Go into the bathroom, mumble a few words, because it'll jog you the next morning.
And then he gets up and he says, what's the matter?
I'm writing, honey.
Nothing.
Not when I'm awake.
Someone asked a question earlier, who to submit to. Does that mean in fandom in general or pro world?
I think most people are talking about it in general, right? I mean, fandom in general.
Writer's market, and you send out queries and do exactly what they say. Just follow it.
Follow the blueprint.
There's another book. It's out of print, but the library probably has it. It's called The Horrible Truth About Publishing.
Sounds like it.
But it's really good.
Honest?
How bad?
Awful.
Fandom? Unless you're starting a brand new zine, I would suggest reading what the people have already written, because a lot of zines tend to skew themselves in specific ways. Consummation stories, she's not dead stories, beginning stories, romance, adventure. Find out what you enjoy, what your story will fit well with, and go for them.
Question on that. Since the last season, there's a whole new vein of stories coming out. She comes home type things and all of that.
She's not dead.
And all of that type of thing. Is there still room for first-time stories?
Certainly.
Because I remember reading somewhere a comment by some editor or something that there was no more interest in those.
No, that may be one editor's feeling, but
But
it's
it isn't a widely spread thing, because I don't see as many of them either, and yet I think they're almost the most fun.
Write what you want to write, and there will be a home.
First time to Catherine of Bits, you mean?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
We're going back to the age of innocence here, and not the
Over 160.
Jacob's 4 years old type thing.
There are over 160 titles out there right now, and I'm sure in there are room for first-time stories.
If it's well written, it will be a charm.
Get a young zine too, because a lot of editors don't know what they're getting into. They put out one effort, and they write everything in it, and their minds are blown. That's, you know, they're worn out. They're too busy filling orders, or just, I'll never do that again. If you submit to them, it encourages them to put out a second issue, maybe a contributor's issue, and not write everything. Because editors need a lot of encouragement from the writers too.
Yes. Everyone needs feedback.
I was going to say, I think that the pendulum is swinging back, because I have heard people say, oh, I'm so sick of first-time stories. If I read another one, I'll puke. And then, I'm so sick of Catherine and the live stories. I'm so sick of third season now. I mean, whatever saturates the market, you get tired of. I mean, how many ways can you bring Catherine back?
And if you can find out with a new way,
So-
you can find out with
New
a good
angle.
new way, so
So,
much better.
I mean, there was a time when I was
Maybe.
tired of reading first-time stories, but now I'm back to doing it. I'm enjoying them again. It's what when you pick up a zine and there's 6 first-time stories in it, it gets a little monotonous, so.
They tend to meld into one giant story
Yeah.
in your mind.
Yeah, I think it swings back. I think there's a place for anything, but it might not always be the right time. But
Write it,
you know,
feel it,
if you can
care
try,
about
yeah.
it, make it your best effort. And don't worry about what everybody else thinks. Don't write for the market, write for yourself.
That's
If you end up writing for someone else, it's going to change what you're writing, it's going to rearrange your thinking, and you're going to fret about every line. Well, will they like this? Well, they'll yell about that. I can't put that in there, and it's not your work anymore.
You can't even write when you get to that point. You get a block because it's not you. It's not the characters. You're not going where the characters want to go. You're going where you think your readers want to go. You can't write for your audience. Write for you. Write for the characters. What Vincent tells you to write, what Catherine tells you, do that. You need to listen to the voice in here, not out there.
Because people will dictate. Very much they will dictate. They will send you plots and say, write that.
You had that happen to you?
Yes. Amazing stories, and we largely say, no, write it yourself.
Sometimes we say, sure, okay, we'll work it in. It's a good idea. It just depends on if it's a dictation or a suggestion or I've had a wonderful brainstorm. Because the feedback affects how you write. It really does.
A lot of people get ideas, but they'll tell you, oh no, I could never write a story, but I have the idea, so that's probably where a lot of that comes from.
Idea. Chase it down. No one is born knowing how to write. They're born with
But
ideas.
some people won't. Some people will not sit down and write a story.
Also, if you could find a partner, like if you have 10 ideas and someone else has 3, sit down and outline it together. That will feed the imagination in ways you would not believe. You will have more stories than you can have time to write.
It's like if you find a friend, you can hang a story, you go, what if he does something else?
Yes. It gives things an entirely new slant.
What do you mean?
Someone you can trust that you can bounce ideas off of. A good, trusted friend, someone you can take something to and say, what do you think? And know that they are going to give you an honest opinion, but they're not going to hand you back bleeding crumbs.
But straighten one thing out in the beginning. Is it a collaboration or is it just a brainstorm?
Oh, yes.
If you write the story with someone's help, even if they just give you verbal help and they print it, they make under your name only, the person may come back and feel very, very hurt. I felt like I contributed to this story. Why isn't my name?
In the professional world, that's the way it goes. If you contribute, you go around and say, oh. In fandom, it's a different rule, but feelings still preside. Don't step on your co-writers if it's nasty.
Or even your co-idea. Others make, see what they want, what kind of credit they want. Some don't want any.
No, some are delighted to fuel the creative process in any way that they can. And these people are worth their weight in gold. The kind that will say, what if, as you said, we're the basis for all stories. What if? What if this happened? What if Hughes didn't die and he came back? What would happen? It's a wonderful place for starting. And a lot of people, when you get that great big pit that you've written yourself into, can come along and throw the right rock in it.
Questions?
Yes, I'm sitting here babbling here.
Good.
It's the very pearl of wisdom that drops from your lips. Purple prose. To all the written you think?
A wild reader, yeah.
I find some problems that I cannot reread my story and figure out what's missing out of it. So I read it as I write. I know where they're at. I know, what
Give
they're
it to
doing.
someone
And
else.
it's like the last person on earth you want to give it to is my husband.
No.
Please, just, chase me down the hall and say, well, where are they? What do you mean, where are they? Of course they're, it's not there, is it?
You can also let it sit for a week or 2 if you don't want to give it. But giving it to someone else is really the best thing. Can they see it? Can they feel it? That is really. If you can't feel it, you need to go back and do another draft on it. Just keep working on it. Because if you're not going to touch someone, make them laugh, cry, throw the book across the room. As long as it evokes an emotion, you're doing your job right. When they're just going,